How's it going, everyone? Sessiion here. Welcome to Final Fantasy XIV. This is, upon request, a video guide in terms of some settings changes you can make with the game, as well as HUD layouts for this game as a whole. And I wanted to showcase to you a little bit of the evolution through my playtime experience of what HUD changes I've made that really do allocate to just my personal preferences and also recommendation as well. So just first and foremost, this game has a lot of changes you can make, and you will definitely get overwhelmed to a degree. But again, I think that the whole perspective is to just find comfort in terms of your settings. Now, I'm going to showcase to you real quick before we get started what the default version of the HUD looks like at the base game when you start it up. Okay, this is what the HUD looks like originally if you are playing the game for the first time. I mean, plus or minus a couple of things, because that second hotbar that I have, this one up here and this one up here, aren't technically usually there. I've added those for personal preference to my playstyle with controller. But as you can see with the HUD, you know, the map is a little bit askew from the corner like I had it. This the local time here is pretty large. These are buffs, and this here, and you know, the job gauge is here, and then the information for the actual instances here, my inventory, my guild, you know, the XP bar, all this stuff is here. Now, this is what it looks like for me when for my personal HUD changes, this is what mine looks like. So as you can see, it's not too different, but it is different in some specific scenarios. The most important thing that I focused on when it came down to my HUD settings was to make sure that I gave myself as much space in the middle as possible visually to see the boss in the arena and the layout and everything too. And I'm also going to take into consideration what it looks like when you're targeting the boss, because as you can see in the original, see, like the HP of the boss is up here and the focus target is over here. Focus target is when you basically are not targeting something like directly, but you can still keep an eye out for like the health or the level of the creature that you're, you know, whatever you're fighting. So that setting is listed here in the top, and this is one of the first things that I realized throughout playing the game that I wasn't a fan of, that I had to move, and then that let me play with the rest of my HUD, and I ended up moving the HUD of the HP and the target down here. Now let's just get started, and I'll showcase to you why I made those changes, and just be prepared to be overwhelmed by like a little bit, but I'll try and take it slow and explain to you every change and why I've made them and how it works. So to access the HUD layout, you either press escape if you're playing keyboard and mouse and you go here to HUD layout, or you can press start on controller like I have here and then go to HUD layout here as well. Now, looking at this is very, it's a lot. It is, and it even goes even further and beyond as well. But again, it's just a matter of keeping it, you know, just important to the moments that it matters for. So let's just break it down slowly. So looking at the default version here, what you'll notice is there's a lot of different elements that are changed throughout the majority of it. The first thing that I would look at and just focus on is to make sure that you can move things around and change the size of it, right, with relations to what you enjoy. Everything here is at 100% normal size, essentially. For here, I have everything around like 80 to 60 to 90, depending on what it is. So I personally wanted to move the health and target of the boss away from the middle, because there was one time where I was doing a raid, and there's a mechanic where you have to look at the top of the boss's head, and I couldn't see that because of the boss's HP was covering that moment. So it kind of made it difficult for me to actually do what I needed to do to fight that boss. So once I moved it out of the way, essentially, it made it easier for me to see this top half of the section of the boss fight, which made my life a lot easier. So I would recommend just moving things in a way that you can access it just by a quick glance, but it's not necessary to do content, whether it's for dungeons or trials, raids, ultimates, storyline, whatever have you. Additionally, what I would recommend is, as you can see here from the original default version, I'm going to just kind of take a moment to put things into normal perspective real quick. Give me 1 second. So a lot of the information as it's listed is listed all together in a group. Okay, so for example, if you look at the top here, I have like I have the echo, which you get for doing old content. Don't worry about it, it's just a buff. These are 2 buffs that I get from my free company that I'm a part of. And if I turn on my tank stance, it also kind of groups up with these buffs. Now, personally, I don't need these 3 to be listed. I mean, I can also unclick this just because, but it's part of the unsyncness, so you can ignore that red buff for now. Better yet, if I can unclick it, that'd be good. I can't though, so it's okay. I don't personally like that if I'm fighting the boss and all of my buffs and debuffs are in the same place, it gets really cluttered pretty quickly, as you can see. And it's honestly just because there's buffs in that list that are just a little bit unnecessary to have there in the moment. So the first change I would do is if you click on this bar, you can click on it here and it'll showcase you that it's highlighted. You can click on this cog and change the UI element settings here. And then you'll be able to actually, again, you're going to be overwhelmed with a lot of these options. Honestly, there's no harm in just clicking around and just seeing what does what, and then you can cancel it if you feel like you made a mistake. I just wouldn't press save until you're like really content with it. But I would take this element of status information and split it into 3 groups. What this does is it lets you split up your buffs from your like other buffs that aren't really immediate to the boss fight that you're doing or the content you're doing, and it separates it from your debuffs. So enhancement is any buff that you get from either your team, yourself, your mitigation, all that stuff. Enfeeblement is basically debuffs. So if the boss hits you with like a burn, then it'll be separated from your buffs. So you can easily just distinguish those two, and now you'll know that if you're being buffed or unbuffed or whatever, you can actually worry about that by separating the column here. And then info is just other information, like I said, whether it's a buff or like a timer thing, something that's not really related to the actual instance you're in, but it is a buff that you want to know that's there. I just would have that out of the way. I have it separated pretty largely from these two in my default version here, just because I don't really need this status effect information. I just need my buffs and my debuffs. I think that's the most important part to have it when it comes to doing raid content. Additionally, as you can see here, this target bar is a really, really big, chunky bar, right? I have it. You can also split this bar into multiple segments. So I'm gonna pull the boss real quick, and I'll show you a little bit of what that looks like. So I gotta be careful with this too, because I'm very, very powerful in comparison. So when you're in the middle of attacking the boss, right, you can see that he uses this ability here, Infernal Howl, and then the debuff here is separated, right? That's because of how I have it listed. So because I separated it, if I didn't have it separated, then these would appear in one section, which again, like I said, can be a little bit confusing when there's a lot going on. See, now the difference though is that the debuff is separated by the buffs here, but to have it be listed like this in this order, it's kind of hard to figure it out. Okay. Now there is obviously a lot going on, so just like bear with me here. I'm gonna just real quickly get rid of this stuff, and then we can totally worry about that after the fact. Let me just, okay, there you go. So the reason why I have the HUD separated the way as it is just for that reason alone. I don't like the debuffs and the buffs kind of coinciding with each other. I'd rather just have them separated in its entirety. So that's why I have them separated as so. So I'll go ahead and redo that change. Split into 3 groups. Boom. So now you just have, you have your buff and your debuff. The other thing I wanted to showcase to you, as you can see right now, and don't worry about the boss fight. It's not that big of a deal. When there's multiple targets, as you see all these nails are around, all these target things, this is what this entire column is for. This is your enemy list. Now, in the default version, it puts the enemy list smack in the middle of your HUD by default. And I personally did not like this change at all. I personally, when I first encountered this boss fight, this was something that I didn't know I can change. So I didn't bother to actually change it, basically. Not that I regret it. I just, my experience of doing the content was very difficult just for that reason alone. And as a result, I just really wanted to just remove that in its entirety. So as a result, if you look at my main HUD, see, I have it all the way over here on the right. I have it here instead of like smack in the middle. Because again, in the event that I am fighting one boss, it's not that big of a deal. But if I'm fighting like 8 targets at the same time, it'll be listed here in this column, but it still doesn't cover the middle of my HUD, and I really, really like that. So I do recommend that you take the enemy list. It's a very small option in the HUD layout, right? It's small. You can make it larger, right? I have it very small. I would just move that out of the way. Just very simply put, just move that out of the way. Now, the other thing that you may have been, I don't know if you've been noticing it or not, but the boss, if I look at the default version of this, right? The boss has a moment where they essentially will charge an ability, and it'll appear. Oh, let me just. I'll show you afterwards. Yeah, we just gotta like just move out of the way and avoid this attack. So the boss has various attacks, and this rule applies to every boss fight in the game to a degree. They have mechanics, and the mechanic is usually a charge ability that they'll use against you. See, Infernal Howl, it casts this yellow bar. That means that the boss is preparing an attack on you. Now, Eruption is another one. So because the HUD elements are all in one position with this target bar, that's just naturally where it's going to appear if you don't separate these elements, okay? So if I do separate the elements like I'll show you here, now as you'll notice, the HP bar by itself is smaller. So I'll just move that out of the way. The status is anything that I apply as a debuff on the boss. So tanks have an ability called Reprisal. If I reprisal the boss, right, it's going to appear, it appears this little purple icon, right? This is what that is. So I'd like to move this underneath that to kind of keep it consistent to how it normally is. But the main reason why I changed it as I did is because of this target info progress bar here. This is the thing that tells you, hey, boss is doing mechanics. And I like this to be in the middle of my battle, because that way I can keep focusing on my, I can keep doing my battle or my, fighting my raid, whatever that it is. And while the boss is, I'm fighting the boss and working on myself, I can still keep an eye out for the boss's attacks without necessarily staring at that, because as you can see here, because the boss's HP is over here, like if I had it natural, it would be above this area, right? So I don't like that it's over here, but as you can see, it appears on my character's person. So when the boss is going to do an attack, I can just see that it's going to cast an attack on my character. So I don't have to worry anymore about looking for it over in this area. When the boss casts an ability, I just see that it's going to be doing Hellfire, so I can still concentrate on the center point of my HUD. I don't have to worry about like looking for it anywhere. So that's why I just highly recommend that you, organizing your HUD that way. I find that to be extremely, extremely helpful. So we did it. So honestly, that information just does come in handy, and I'm gonna queue into that that fight again just to kind of showcase some more tidbits, because I think it's really important to adjust your settings when you're not when you're fighting a boss that you're trying to actually try to defeat. I would just, when you're in this waiting time, I feel like this is a great time to figure out what to organize your HUD with and all that fun stuff, just because you have everything that's necessary when you're in battle. So with the HUD, like I said, I moved a lot of things around just because of my comfort and my sense of things too. Additionally, right, in the default version, you have like your inventories here, your gil, your XP bar. I find that the EXP bar is not helpful to have out when you are max level, or if you don't really care about your level. Sometimes it could be important, but it's not always important. So I just have that taken out. Now, to take that out, if you're using a mouse and keyboard, you can just right-click it, and then it'll go away. You press save. So now when I go back into my instance, right, HP bar is gone. But now, because it's gone, now I have this gap between the bottom of the monitor and my actual like health. I can move that, right? So now I'll actually just take my XP bar and I'll just move out of the way. We don't care about that, right? But now we can bring the HP here, and now I have more space to create, and I can actually move more stuff around, right? So I feel like that's why it's super important to actually make sure that you just take out elements you don't need. I think that's the other big point to this too. So like when I'm in the middle of raiding, I don't care about what's in my inventory, right? I can just take that out. I don't care about how much money I have in the middle of a raid, take that out, right? The alliance list, this is when you're doing a 24-man raid. This only is important when you're doing 24-man. it doesn't appear if you're doing an 8-man raid, right? The game knows that if you're doing 8-man, this won't appear, which is nice. Now, as you can see, I'm in a party by myself, so nobody is with me, right? I don't have like a list of people up here at the top left. I had that on purpose. So if you go here and then go to your UI settings under, so for start character configuration, you'll go to this listing settings here. You'll click on UI settings, and then you'll go to party lists. And in this party list tab, you can actually hide the party list when you're solo. If you unclick this, now my name appears. And I also would turn this on when you're adjusting your settings. If you'd like to have it out at all times, by all means. I choose not to, because obviously it's a setting I don't need when I'm not in battle, and it's a setting that I do use when I am in battle. So, and you can also adjust the HUD for this as well. So, you know, I would click this, press the cog, you can change the size. You can also align it from the bottom and make it go from down up. I like to go from top down. And then that way you can also make the size change. You can, you know, I would move out this New Game Plus thing. I'd put this up here, you know, and again, like, you're just creating more space, because this information might have some, like, this area right here could have something you can use. So just opening that space up a bit makes it a little bit easier, because it's different right now, because I'm only the only person here. But if there's 8 players, this entire section right here is going to be covered with people's names, jobs, health, and all that stuff. If you find it, you know, if you think it's useful to keep out very much in front of you, by all means. But because I'm only focusing on very specific things based on the job that I'm playing, I like to make it smaller and put it a little bit further into the corner as much as I can. Same thing with limit break. It won't appear because I'm by myself, but if there was 4 people, there'd be an LB there, or 8 people too. I also would like to make this smaller, and again, you know, just tuck it in the corner. And as you make things smaller, you can also kind of bunch them up a little bit together and still create more and more space, right? So as a result, this is kind of what the end product looks like, right? My objective was to just make sure that I create as much middle space as possible. I also like to separate, like I said, the buffs and the debuffs from the boss's stuff. I like to have the progress bar. This, in my personal opinion, is the most important thing to use and change and make comfortable for yourself, because this is the thing that tells you that the boss is doing stuff. So having this somewhere very easy to see, I think, is incredibly important. You can even make it larger. It's to whatever your heart contents, right? And then secondly, you have the hotbar thing. Now, I personally, I'm going to take this up and put this here. This hotbar system over here on the far right, this is if you're playing on keyboard and mouse or PC. But because I play controller, I use the controller hotbar. So the cross hotbar is for my controller specifically. And again, with the settings in the HUD layout, you can't really change much. But if you're using the actual settings in the character configuration, you can. So if you go down to this like double plus looking thing, this is the hotbar settings. I have it set so that I always look at my hotbar. I don't ever turn this off. I've tried to experiment with it. Don't recommend it. If you click on the display hotbar help, if you turn this off, that means that you know, when you actually try to look at like the meter thing, it'll actually display like how to use the hotbar, if you will. I haven't touched that. It's fine. There is a way to where is it at? There's a setting where you can actually hide the display. So sometimes when I highlight an ability, it'll appear in the top right. There is a setting to turn that off. I think it's under display. Where is that? Maybe I don't know where it is. Okay, I will find that, but I know that it's somewhere. But you can definitely you can toggle that off. I really don't know where it is. Okay, I'll just do it later. But yeah, like I said, I find that to be nice to just have the action there. But you can, there is a way to turn off that ability, the display for that ability. Oh, okay. If you go to HUD layout, I just figured it out. Go to system, and then I have it hidden here. But there is an action help. If you turn that off and press save, now when you highlight it, see, it won't tell me what the ability is by description, but I can click on it. That way it doesn't appear every time I click on it, you know? It doesn't do that all the time, because like with potions, right, that's an item, but you can also toggle that off. So if I click on item help here and toggle this off, now when I click on a potion, it won't tell me the information about the potion, right? So you can also, again, I think that's a really easy way to just remove the ability for it to distract you when you're doing content. But because I play on controller, I find this to be a little bit easier to just keep on. But if you are playing with keyboard and mouse and you press, like, if you like click on your buttons, you know, you want to basically keep that in the keep it off, just because it makes it a little bit easier to just not worry about it pretty much. So let me turn that back on. Just put that back. Okay. Any last minute changes I can think of? Honestly, like for me, I can't reiterate it enough times. Creating as much center as possible when you're doing any kind of battle, I just think it's really important. So again, if I go to toe to toe with him, like, see this quote thing here, how he's talking. This is something that is unchangeable right now. You can't change that. So it's just gonna forever be here when he talks. Additionally, when it comes down to like the target focus thing, you can't change this either. This is just stuck here as it is. This flying text you can change the size of, but you can't change the positioning of. So if you go to character for configuration and go to display name, UI settings, you can go to general HUD rather, and then you can actually change the flying text size. I have it at large. You can make it smaller or you make it larger, right? You have all these options. I think we're dead, but we'll see. I recommend also changing some of those settings as well. It does just make it easier for you to, again, just have information listed as it is. You can change your server time. So on the top, in the far top right over here, I have different times. This might look confusing, but very simple. Eorzea time is the time that's in game. So if it's like 7 p.m., it's probably dark out, despite it currently being 2 p.m. my actual Earth time, like real life time. It's 2 o'clock, so the sun's still out. And then server time is the server time in particular for when it just, registers things that are happening in the game. So that server time is not as necessary, but I feel like Eorzea time and local time is the most important. You can also have your name display or your world display that you're currently in. So like my character that I'm using currently is from Ultros on Primal. So if I go to like Crystal and go to Marlborough, then I can actually have it display that on my HUD that I'm in Marlborough. I like having that setting on just because I don't lose track of where I am positionally, right? So I feel like having that setting is also really helpful. One important thing that I do find to be helpful, if it's a preference thing for you, is you can display only the detriments that you inflict. So what that means is, if I use this ability called Reprisal, and you'll see it right here, this reduces the damage dealt by the boss. You can have it so that only your stuff appears. So if you're doing like an alliance raid and everyone's using all of their stuff to debuff the boss, it's going to be very cluttered like this. If you don't like that, you can click this option and have it only display what you do. I personally don't like that. I'd rather just keep it show everything because it's not too often where it becomes like an issue. But that option is still there as well. Another really helpful thing to do is to look at the target's HP percentage. So if I unclick this, it'll say that Ifrit is level 50. Oh, I feel like I'd say right now. So this is a level 50 boss battle, right? If I have this toggled off, then you'll only see the boss's level, which is nice, but you know that it's level 50, right? But if you turn it on, you can actually see how much HP the boss has remaining. So people really like to have this on because it lets you know when you're very close to whether you're going to lose or not, sort of thing. So I like this option just because, again, it makes it really easy for me to know when the boss is, like, at 0.1% and, it's so close to, like, being defeated and that sort of thing. So I really like it for that reason alone. And that target display HP thing applies to everything you fight. So if it's at full health, then it won't appear. But if you do have it, once it loses some HP, then that percentage will also decrease with time. Obviously, this is a bad example because I'm killing everything in one shot, but that rule does apply to everything that you are targeting in the game. So I find it to be extremely helpful for that reason alone. Actually, this might work. Nope, never mind. Okay, it's okay. So yeah, honestly, I think those are like some of the most important changes that I would keep in mind of for now. Again, the thing that's really important to keep in mind of is just to find comforts. Last minute thing I can think of is this party list here. So under character configuration in UI settings, You have the party display here. So you can organize this very heavily. So I like to show the party list, obviously. I like to hide it when I'm solo, right? I do like that option. You can also have it showcase whether it's just like your first name only, or only your last name, or just the initials. You know, you have that option as well to choose. I'm cool with just full name. It's just I haven't changed that setting. Another easy thing to talk about now that we're in this boss battle is the status effect icon display. This rule applies for everything. So if you get debuffs, if you get buffs, in the party list specifically here, if I put on a bunch of different debuffs, as you can see, the number in the buff list goes up to 10. This includes your buffs and your debuffs from your boss. I don't like how many that there are here, because the same thing that's here copies up here. So I only pay attention to the side here when it comes down to looking at debuffs. But I have it listed at 5 just because I like to reduce that clutter, if you will, just to make it easier for myself. I don't really worry about all the stuff that's going on. I just focus on my stuff. But if I do need to look at other people's stuff, I use the party list. But for my only, I look at the top here. Lastly, and most importantly, I would say too, with the party list in mind, is this remaining time display. Now, as you can see, this is a debuff that the boss is giving me. There is a timer up here, which is normally the case, but in the party list, it's not there. So this was a recent change that they added, where you can put the timer here in the party list and it'll reflect as it is up here too. I think that this has definitely been a really great change they added over the course of time, because in the event that you're doing a boss fight, and let's say like there's 4 people that have this buff, but the times were different, then you kind of have to work with that. But it's hard to know when you can't see who has what time in the party list. That change does allow you to see the time in the party list in comparison. So, you know, if there is if there's 4 different poisons on each person and then the timing is different, you know, you can kind of understand that without manually clicking or targeting that person to figure out how much they have remaining. Turning that option on lets you see it, and you can still concentrate on the boss. Last thing I would talk about here is the party list order. So as a tank player myself, personally, I like to have it in order of, you know, I have tank, healer, and then the rest are DPS. You can toggle which order you want that to be in any order, and it does respectfully put it in that order as well. It doesn't necessarily organize it by just randomness, so you can't do like, you know, tank, healer, DPS, healer, tank, DPS, you know, you can't do it like that, but it does categorize them by group. And you can obviously make that option toggle for tank versus healer versus DPS and everything too, so the same rules apply. I have healer, tank, healer, DPS like this in order because as a healer player, I want to be able to target my tanks first versus targeting the healer. That way I can keep my tanks healthy, and it makes my life a little bit easier when I'm healing. And then DPS, you know, usually I have to work as a DPS with other DPS, so I like to have them grouped up in that way as well. And then I have tanks last just because it's easy to figure out which tank is which, basically, in order. Now, additionally to all this too, you can role sort them, which means that when you queue into a party, no matter what party that it is, you can basically prioritize an order on which tank appears from top to bottom. I don't really have it set differently between tank and DPS. These 2 settings have not been touched, but I do recommend you modify the healer one. The reason for this is because right now, in terms of how 14 plays itself out when it comes to doing raid content or even like trials, there is usually a moment where you have to separate into 2 groups of 4. And I would say like most of the time you have group 1 and group 2, and the pure healer or white mage / astrologian, right, they do pure healing, they're usually group 1, and then your shield healer is usually group 2, which is your scholar and your sage. So rather than having to organize it and figure out which healer is in which group, you can just have it organize itself automatically. So now you just automatically have your pure healers that appear first in your party list and your shield healer appear second. Now, of course, in the case scenario that your shield healer is in group 1 and your pure healer is in group 2, then you would have to manually go to your party list and just make that adjustment. But naturally, though, I feel like most of the time it is like this in that order. You can definitely find a comfort for it as well. I think that it is important to organize the role sorting for DPS, but I just haven't made that change personally. So I've just not touched this at all. I do recommend you do changes though, depending on what class you play. I feel like if I play like an Astrologian where I can individually use the card to buff people, I would definitely organize this. Otherwise, I don't think you need to organize it all too much. And I think honestly, that's just the gist of it. So if there's any questions that you have, please do let me know. Like I said, the most important thing to do is you go into an instance, you just try to figure out what your comfort is when it comes to your hotbars and your UI settings and your HUD, and just make sure that if you see something somewhere that you don't like, there's an extremely high likelihood that you can move it and change it and have it work in a way that works best for you. Any questions you have, please do let me know in the comments. I'm more than happy to answer anything and everything. So yeah, have fun with updating your HUD. And like I said, just reach out to me in case of anything. Check me out on the Discord or Twitter, in the comments and YouTube section. Like, you have a whole plethora of ways to contact me directly. So have fun organizing the HUD, and I'll catch you next time. Take care.